Is it true?
Not everything.
He's got more inside of him than any man I've ever met.
Who are you looking for?
William Shakespeare.
I have no talent for waiting.
For women in my family.
Hamnet is a 2025 historical drama that approaches one of literature's greatest legacies from an intimate and deeply human perspective, shifting the focus away from fame and genius and placing it firmly on love, grief, and the quiet devastation that reshapes a family forever. Directed by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Chloé Zhao and written by Zhao alongside acclaimed novelist Maggie O'Farrell, the film reimagines the emotional world surrounding William Shakespeare through the lens of his family, particularly the life and loss of his young son, Hamnet. Rather than presenting a traditional biographical account, the story unfolds as a lyrical meditation on how personal tragedy becomes the unseen force behind artistic creation, exploring the fragile boundary between ordinary domestic life and enduring cultural legacy. At the heart of the film is a marriage defined by profound connection and equally profound absence. Jessie Buckley delivers a powerful performance as Agnes, a woman of deep intuition, resilience, and emotional intelligence, whose inner life forms the spiritual center of the narrative. She is portrayed not merely as a wife or mother, but as a fully realized individual shaped by nature, knowledge, and instinct, someone who understands the rhythms of life and loss long before they become unavoidable. Paul Mescal plays William Shakespeare, presented here not as a distant literary icon, but as a working man, a husband, and a father whose ambitions pull him away from home, even as his heart remains tethered to it. Their relationship is depicted as passionate and grounded, marked by mutual respect, creative tension, and an unspoken understanding that both binds them together and quietly drifts them apart. The film situates its story within the textures of everyday life, emphasizing small moments that accumulate meaning over time. Rural landscapes, domestic routines, and the natural world are not treated as mere backdrops, but as living, breathing elements that shape the characters' emotional realities. Chloé Zhao's direction leans into visual intimacy, favoring natural light, quiet observation, and a sense of authenticity that allows the audience to feel as though they are inhabiting the same spaces as the characters. This approach reinforces the idea that the most earth-shattering events often emerge from the most ordinary settings, and that grief does not announce itself loudly, but arrives through silence, absence, and the disruption of familiar patterns. The story's emotional core revolves around the twin children, Hamnet and Judith, whose bond is portrayed as deeply connected and almost mystical. Their shared world is one of imagination, play, and unspoken understanding, a childhood innocence that feels both joyful and fragile. When illness enters this world, it does so gradually, with a sense of inevitability that mirrors the historical realities of the time. The film does not sensationalize suffering, but instead allows it to unfold with restraint, focusing on how each member of the family responds differently to the looming loss. The absence of melodrama makes the tragedy more piercing, as the audience is invited to sit with the characters in moments of helplessness and quiet fear. Emily Watson and Joe Alwyn appear in supporting roles that enrich the emotional and social fabric of the story, representing the broader family and community dynamics that influence Agnes and William's lives. These characters reflect the expectations, judgments, and traditions of the era, providing contrast to Agnes's intuitive worldview and William's evolving identity as both a writer and a father. Their presence underscores how grief is not experienced in isolation, but is shaped by cultural norms, familial roles, and the limitations placed on emotional expression, particularly within marriage and parenthood. As tragedy strikes, the film shifts its focus toward the aftermath, rather than the event itself, exploring how loss fractures time and memory. Agnes's grief is portrayed as all-encompassing, rooted not only in the death of a child, but in the shattering of a shared future that will never come to be. Jessie Buckley's performance captures this devastation with remarkable subtlety, conveying sorrow through stillness, gaze, and physical presence rather than overt displays of emotion. Her grief becomes something elemental, as constant and inescapable as the natural world around her, shaping every thought and action. William's response to loss is markedly different, defined by distance, guilt, and an inability to fully articulate his pain. His work becomes both a refuge and a barrier, a way to process emotions he cannot otherwise confront. The film delicately explores the tension between creation and avoidance, suggesting that art can emerge from grief even when the artist is not fully conscious of that transformation. Paul Mescal portrays this internal conflict with restraint, presenting a man torn between the demands of his vocation and the emotional reality of his family's suffering. One of the film's most compelling aspects is how it reimagines the origin of Hamlet, not as a sudden burst of inspiration, but as a slow, painful evolution rooted in lived experience. The parallels between the play and the family's loss are woven into the narrative with subtlety, allowing viewers to draw connections without overt explanation. Themes of mourning, memory, and the persistence of love beyond death resonate throughout the film, gradually revealing how personal sorrow can be reshaped into a universal story that transcends time and culture. The production itself reflects an extraordinary collaboration of creative forces, with producers including Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nick Gonda, Sam Mendes, Steven Spielberg, Christy McCosco-Krieger, Laurie Borg, and Chloé Zhao herself. This collective brings together a wealth of cinematic experience, supporting a project that prioritizes emotional truth over spectacle. The film's tone remains intimate and reflective, aligning with Zhao's distinctive storytelling style while honoring the literary sensitivity of Maggie O'Farrell's source material. Visually, Hamnet embraces a naturalistic aesthetic that reinforces its emotional themes. The camera lingers on faces, hands, and landscapes, capturing the passage of time and the weight of unspoken emotion. Silence is used as a narrative tool, allowing moments to breathe and inviting the audience to engage with the characters' inner worlds. The pacing is deliberate, emphasizing reflection over momentum and encouraging viewers to absorb the emotional nuances of each scene. Music and sound design are employed sparingly, enhancing rather than overwhelming the storytelling. When music does appear, it underscores the emotional undercurrents without dictating how the audience should feel. This restraint aligns with the film's broader commitment to authenticity and emotional honesty, ensuring that the impact of the story arises from character and context rather than manipulation. Hamnet ultimately presents a meditation on how love persists in the face of irrevocable loss. It suggests that grief is not something to be overcome or resolved, but something that becomes integrated into the fabric of one's existence. The film honors the idea that behind every great work of art lies a deeply human story, often marked by pain, sacrifice, and longing. By focusing on the family rather than the legend, the narrative restores a sense of vulnerability and humanity to a figure often elevated beyond reach. In its closing moments, the film leaves viewers with a quiet sense of continuity, acknowledging that while life is irreversibly altered by loss, it does not end. Memory becomes a form of survival, and storytelling becomes a way to preserve what has been lost while giving it new meaning. Hamnet stands as a poignant exploration of how personal tragedy can ripple outward, shaping not only individual lives, but the cultural stories that endure for generations. Through its performances, direction, and thematic depth, Hamnet positions itself as a film that values emotional resonance over spectacle, inviting audiences to reflect on the connections between love, loss, and creation. It is a story that lingers long after it ends, not because of grand gestures or dramatic twists, but because it speaks to universal experiences that remain deeply personal. In transforming a moment of private grief into a shared cinematic experience, the film offers a powerful reminder that even the most timeless works of art are born from fragile, human moments that echo across time.